Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Movie Magic Show for Wednesday, the 30th of June, 2021. I'm one of your hosts, Shane Bailey, joined by my wickedly talented cast. I'll start at the end now, I want to get to you last, Jason, for a very specific reason. Actually, no, we're going to start with the dulcet tones in your headphones. Here to help engineer a sincere atmosphere, Terry Fear.
Good evening, all. Good evening, boys.
On the very end, be still, come chill until you've had your fill of the heartwarming Will Norman.
Gentlemen, how are you tonight?
Nice.
Fantastic, bro. And he loves his VR and shaking his hips like Shakira. Welcome to the era of Jason Mira.
Hey.
I like that.
Still going with that one,
That's
eh?
the first time I've heard that. That's great.
Oh, so good.
Speaking of Shakira, wherever you happen to be tuning in, we're so glad you've decided to watch the Movie Magic Show every Wednesday, 8:30 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, right here on twitch.tv/magic_cast. We chuckleheads get together to love, like, bash, and trash the latest the entertainment world has to offer. You can follow us here on Twitch. You can also catch the VODs on YouTube. Just search Magic Casts. And follow us on Twitter as well, at Movie Magic Show. We'll notify you when we're going live and tell you what topics we're going to be discussing. Speaking of topics we're going to be discussing, this week we'll be reviewing Pixar's latest cinematic effort in Luca, which is streaming right now on Disney+. No premiere barrier to navigate. Just completely available to all subscribers in Disney+, which is great. Will is also very close to finishing Mad Men, which he's keen to rave about, and Terry is keen to vent about a film called The Big Ugly. We'll get to that later. Before we get to those topics, though, we're going to start with what we like to term our end games. We're going to give you a couple of games to play over the course of the next couple of hours. First and foremost are our movie quotes. I'm going to go to the dulcet tones of Terry Fear for the first one.
Alrighty. This immediately came to me as soon as I read the message. This doesn't always happen. I usually have to work this out. Like, what movie am I going to quote? But as soon as I was like, yeah, I'm on the quote, I'm like, and so here's the quote. When the fuck did we get ice cream? That's the quote, the whole quote. When the fuck did we get ice cream? And I don't know why it came to my head, but as soon as it did, I burst into laughter because it's a brilliant movie.
Yeah, I don't think I know where that one is.
I feel like I should know this. Do you know if I've definitely seen it?
I do not. I have no idea.
Okay.
I think that this movie might have come out before we were doing the original The Awesome Addiction.
Right.
Yeah. It's a good one.
All right, that's movie quote number 1 that you need to try and guess. I'll go to Will now for movie quote number 2.
Yep, so I try to do this in my best accent, but it is, they call it a Royale with cheese.
Instantly know it.
Yeah, I know what that is.
Even I knew that one.
Yep. I thought it's been a while since I've been here, so I thought I'd go easy on everyone.
And the other game we like to play is 6 Degrees. We're going to give you 2 actors. You need to try and link them via films that they've starred alongside in with other actors. So, as an example, if I were to give you Samuel L. Jackson to Nicole Kidman, one solution would be Samuel L. starred in The Phantom Menace with Ewan McGregor, and Ewan McGregor was in Moulin Rouge with Nicole Kidman. That would be 2 Degrees. Mr. Mira.
That's a good one.
What are the actors we need to try and link today?
So these are 2 actors that I was talking to someone about tonight, and we were going through, and she has never seen any movie with this one particular actor in it. And the first one was Bruce Willis, and the second one is Michelle Rodriguez. So we got to try and link Bruce Willis to Michelle Rodriguez.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I think we can do that. And I think we've established a new rule that we're not allowed to use any MCU movies. Because
and I don't think any of them are in the MCU, are they?
Neither of those 2 actors are in the MCU.
No, but we can't link via the
definitely
MCU.
Yeah.
It's just way too easy.
Yeah.
If you use MCU movies. There's too many actors in those films. So, yes, we...
Unless they're in... I thought the rule was we can't do it unless they're in the same scene to... or is that for the movie actor go?
No, I think that was... We had discussed that
specific
specificity, but then I just said, no, ruling out MCU altogether.
Blanket
rule, no MCU. MCU is banned here. Anyway, try and link those 2 actors and let us know if you have a solution in chat. They'll scroll by at the bottom of the screen. Let's now get to... and we're going to answer them at the very end of the show.
I've got it.
You've got it?
I already...
Well done.
I'm just saying right now, figured it out.
Okay.
Yep.
Anyway, let's get to the first topic of the show, and that is our review of Luca, which is the 24th Pixar feature film I'll have you know.
Wow.
I'm going to IMDb where the synopsis reads, on the Italian Riviera, an unlikely but strong friendship grows between a human being and a sea monster disguised as a human. It is directed by Enrico Casarosa, who has served many years as part of the Pixar team in the art department as a storyboard artist. He was also director of La Luna, which is one of their short films a few years ago. But this is his first feature film directorial debut. Yeah, that was a good one. Written by Enrico, Jesse Andrews, and Simon Stevenson. It stars Jacob Tremblay as the main protagonist, Luca. You might know him as Augie from Wonder, which was a heartwarming film way back in 2017. I just bawled my eyes out while I was watching. Stars Owen Wilson and Julia Roberts as Augie's parents.
Wow.
We have Jack Dylan Grazer, who was in Shazam recently as Freddy, and also both It films. And other notable voice actors, we have Maya Rudolph, who we all know and love, Jim Gaffigan, and Sacha Baron Cohen in a small role as well.
What?
But outside of that, not too many.
I was super curious as to who voiced this character, and I looked it up, and I was surprised to see his voice.
Yeah, but not too many other big name voice actors. No Alan Tudyk, surprisingly. Not here, voicing some kind of wacky animal, which is interesting.
Are you sure he wasn't the fish?
Yeah, that first fish, that fish that went bah.
Yeah, the sheep fish.
That's it. Anyway, IMDb score 7.6, a Metascore of 71, and the Rotten Tomatoes, gents. I want to take a guess. Have a shot. Take a shot.
I'm gonna say 91.
I'm gonna say mid to high 80s. I'm thinking like 87, 88.
I was thinking the same thing, so like 88, 89, somewhere around there.
90, smack bang in the middle of your guesses. So interestingly, it's certified fresh, by the way. I think most people wouldn't be surprised at such a high rating for a Pixar film, but it is important to know that it is of the 5 or so most recent Pixar movies that rates at the lower end, and this is something that we certainly noted for Onward, which had an 88% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. Soul had 95%, which was the most recent Pixar feature film. Toy Story 4 a few years ago now, 97%, still very high. Incredibles 2 was 93%, and Coco 97%. So yeah, it's hitting down there with Onward, right? Only 9 out of 10 critics giving it a positive rating. So.
Yeah, I suppose that's interesting because I was surprised about that with Onward. I loved that movie. That was a great movie.
Yeah, a fantastic film. Anyway, so like I said, this one is on Disney Plus right now. I don't believe it got a cinematic release. If it has, then I've certainly not been advertised to see it at the cinemas. It's been really pushed as debuting on Disney Plus, and like I mentioned at the top, not gated by the premier access fee that something like Mulan or there was another movie that was gated recently. What was that?
Raya
and the
Last Dragon, actually the most recent Walt Disney Studios film. So this one not the case, which in my mind, I don't know how you guys feel, gents, but somewhat of a red flag. I was like, this is like the equivalent of a straight to DVD release.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's not a bad equivalency.
Yeah, so I went into this film with a bit of hesitancy. Did anyone share similar feelings?
Yeah, I didn't really know what to expect really, because it was like flew pretty under the radar for myself. So I think the one thing I was really looking forward to was when Mr. Fear here told me that it was quite a short film. I'm like, okay, cool. I'll be able to fly through it, nice and easy to relax to after like a long day at work. And I was very delighted.
Nice. Terry?
It's weird because I love Disney Pixar, and if I had been aware of the fact that it had a cinematic release, I probably would have made the effort to go see it. But because it flew under the radar, and because I barely use Disney Plus for anything outside of checking in for the MCU stuff, and for this, talking about the latest movie that's been released. So I didn't have low expectations because I didn't think about it flying under the radar because I haven't been to the cinemas very much over the last 12 months. So yeah, I went in with basically a neutral palette. No expectation one way or the other. I thought it was kind of cool artwork for the banner. kind of set the tone for the color palette for the film. So yeah, it was nice.
And Will, what about you?
I knew nothing about this movie. I did read a controversial article that I won't bring up here, but that was the first time I heard about the movie Luca. I had no interest in seeing it. I knew it was Pixar, but that was the extent of it. And it's not really. I know this is going to come as a shock to Shane, but I don't jump at Disney or Pixar movies. So I don't mind missing it. But obviously, Shane, you came over and we watched it, and I mean that's the background of what I know of the movie.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, as the Pixar fiend, I'll happily claim as of the group. Might dive into my thoughts. Like I said, I was a bit hesitant going into this one, and just based on the fact, like it definitely just based on the positioning, had a straight to DVD feel, just about how it was put out. But you know, like obviously a weak Pixar film, as I always like to say, is a fantastic animated film in some way, right? Their batting average, if I could put it that way, is so darn high that even they might not, bat a century, but they're probably going to get close each and every time. And I think this is one of those films that sort of sits in the middle of their pantheon of films. Like I said, this is a 24th film, and I would put it nowhere near their best, but also nowhere near their worst. So I'd say around the Monsters Inc. University Good Dinosaur range, well above things like the Cars trilogy, and getting close to things, films that I'm sure, like critically, are probably viewed similarly, like say A Bug's Life. But just because a film like The Bug's Life holds a special place in my heart as a kid when I watched it, I'm not sure I'd put it on the same level. But when you look at, I go to Pixar films for just a heartwarming journey through a fantastical world, and I hope to come out having been moved, in some way emotionally, and been delivered a great story, and hopefully a couple of, nice life lessons along the way. And this, I think, if we're using that as a yardstick, then this film delivers. It's beautiful. I think it leaves itself in an art style that many, I think, would say doesn't necessarily show off their great skill in creating something stunning. That's it. Yeah, it's I think of films like The Croods, right, which is like highly detailed animated film with lots of dirt and particle effects. This has some stunning water, but no more or less stunning than what we've seen in something like Moana. So I didn't come away thinking, holy crap, they've done it again, they've just upped the ante. It is beautiful, and I think the artistic direction is great. But it's just, again, sort of hitting in the middle there. And I will say that at least at the very beginning, a very slow start, and I think this is something that Will felt as well when we first. For me, it really took its time hooking me, and it wasn't until probably about that second act or even halfway through the film where I'm like, oh, okay, here's the message they're trying to deliver, and I'm now along for the ride. And it was in the last 5 to 10 minutes that the film had me tearing up. And I truly enjoyed the friendship between Luca and Alberto. I like the message that this film is trying to deliver as well. I think it does it incredibly well, and I think an audience of any age can walk away having maybe not learnt a lesson, but at the very least walked out. I can say walked out of the cinema, but gotten up out of their lounge and maybe closed Disney Plus, giving a second or third thought to what the message that's been delivered to them via the film. So, look, I thoroughly enjoyed it, but it wasn't until later on in the movie that I really fell in love with it. But Jason, you seem to be hooked from the very beginning.
Oh, hooked from the very beginning. I guess when you're talking about the actual hook itself, I guess you're right. But from what I felt at the beginning, it was just like bang, 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 bang until he's just like, out. You know what I mean? I was like, wow, they're really hitting those story marks like really quickly. Like you barely get any time to like hang out with the parents, barely get any chance to like see what all the little sheep fish are doing, but like they did it in a way where it was just long enough for you to, okay, this is like a little community they've got down here. This is like they're farming whatever, blah blah blah. And he's herding the fish. It was really cool. I thought that was a really cool world building.
I think we can give some context, right? Like Luca and Alberto and his family, they're humanoid sea monsters. They live under the water, and they don't go near the surface because humans are dangerous, and they're trying to keep their secrecy, right? The humans hunt them down and kill them, so that they don't want that. And like any great adventure animated movie, with the young ones sort of bucking the message that their parents are trying to get them to live. Very much Crude vibes, right? Never not be afraid is Nicolas Cage's character's
Never not be afraid.
Never not be afraid is Nicolas Cage's character motto in that film. Like, just always be afraid. Because something's trying to kill you. So we live a very sheltered life. And Eep, played by Emma Stone, is all about adventure and getting out there and exploring the world. Very similar to Luca. So that's the setup. Sorry, Jason, continue.
No, it's fine. I was just about to say, I think I've only seen like the first 10 minutes of The Croods over and over again, but I haven't seen
Is that because of me?
Yes, because of you.
Because it's got the greatest animated opening of all time?
If you say so, yes. Where was I? So I think, I in regards to the actual hook, I guess you're right. But in regards to like the actual pacing, it was just like bang, bang, bang. For myself, just like watching it, going, hey, this is good. Yeah, it's very, very cool, and like the setup and to get to where they are, I thought it was really, really quick. But it wasn't. Yeah, I guess you're right. And it wasn't until they actually got to that point. That was when I was like, okay, because I don't know if I've said it on the show before. Like I kind of gauge how invested in the film I am, especially if I'm watching it at home, like how much I'm playing with my phone. Because, I've just gotten home from work. I'm like catching up on things. I've got emails from work. I've got text messages from work, and I'm just going through them as well. And I'm like, and it wasn't until about the end of the second act, the beginning of the third act, was when that happened. Which isn't to say like the first two thirds of the movie was intriguing. There were so many moments where I'll be on my phone and I'll be watching the TV and I'll go and then back to
You're the worst.
I am the worst. It's
So
not
bad.
it's my ADHD. I need to like, that's why I have so many things around my house.
that's why.
Yeah.
I will agree that the first act, and I remember Ben mentioning this about Frozen when we reviewed it way back in 2013, in that it was a perfect setup, right? Like, they so efficiently establish the rules of this world and give you, the audience, a context of what's going on with Anna and Elsa, and their royalty, and the parents have died, and she's got this thing, the magic, and it's secret and whatnot. And they do that in the space of 10 minutes fantastically. I think similarly here, they're equally as efficient in explaining the world, but it hadn't made me care in that time, and that wasn't until the second act. Terry.
That's essentially. Right. I was going to say the same thing. I was going to say similar to what you just said, Shane, without the Frozen reference. I was going to say I think you're both right. They very efficiently kind of drive some progression with the initial world building and the characters' direction, but you don't have any sense of purpose. You don't have any sense or idea of what the whole point is until much later in the film. So I do think that you're both right. The establishing of the world, the establishing of certain characters was done pretty quickly. That first interaction with the boat at the start of the film, and then the crumbs that interaction leaves for Luca's character, all of that's established very, very quickly, and the taboo of the outside world, or the above the surface world, and the allure that seems to have for Luca is established very quickly. And he sheds it also quite quickly.
And that's the thing, it's more just a curiosity, right? Like Luca at the very beginning, he wants to know, like he's got this sense of wonder, and he's keen to explore. But even his first foray, above the surface, he's still scared and unsure, and he wants to go back. Like he isn't Eep in Cruise, right? He's not dying to get out there and live his life, and so you don't understand his intrinsic motivation until he meets Alberto, and obviously understands that like there's a world out here that's greater than he is, and that's becomes his motivating force. That doesn't happen until 20-30 minutes into the movie, which is to my point.
There's also like a familiar, like, oh, my parents gonna like send me away type
right,
of
there's a
guy.
fear. Yeah.
There's definitely, he's like, I don't necessarily like where I am. I don't know where this place is going to take me, but I definitely don't want to go to this place, because that's worse than where I am. Like, I already feel somewhat stifled and trapped. To be in the literal abyss would be death. It would be death. That would
Side
kill
note, the uncle just looks so cool. The character design,
the
the see-through chest,
semi-translucent,
so cool.
Horrifying, right? Just punch him in the heart. Just no harder.
Harder. Yeah, that's it.
I think
you're absolutely right, Terry. Yeah.
I was gonna say, like, I think feel free to chime in if you guys have similar thoughts on this as well, or some good examples. But in the early stages, definitely some of that, Pixar world building magic, right? Like the fact that there's a fish, like a seemingly normal looking fish, that when it opens its mouth makes the sound of a sheep. It's just like it's a sheep fish, and he's a water shepherd, and that's his job as the kid of the family, to take the fish sheep out and make sure they graze and bring them back home safely, and that's his life every single day. I like that sort of thing.
Yeah, I agree. That introduction to his character is going past the other primary production agricultural industries, because there's like kelp farmers, and they're like, hey man, and they're like cutting the kelp and gathering it up as if it was wheat, but it's underwater. One of the things that I couldn't help but think was, I'm like, all right, what are they? Because like, you cultivate sheep for a few reasons, right? You want milk, you want meat, you want wool. What are they like? What you cultivate fish for one thing that I know of,
right?
And that's mostly to eat them, right? So I was confused about the relationship between these fish and the people, because
you thought about it on a much deeper level than I ever did, Terry, while I was watching.
Cultivating them to
could be them that they keep the ecosystem.
Like, that's true, sure. Maybe that is. Yeah, it's about maintaining the biodiversity and the ecosystem from algae and stuff. He's like Jacques in the fish tank.
That's right.
Of Finding Nemo. I found the interplay between his family. I didn't pick Jim Gaffigan's voice as his dad straight away. It was like eating me not knowing who it was, because I knew the voice. But that whole like, don't ever do this thing, don't ever go to this place, don't even talk about it, don't ask about it, show no curiosity. Like, it kind of grinds my gears, that type of relationship between parents. And then they say like, look me in the eyes and understand that I love you, even though I'm telling you to not be curious about this wide world that we live in. And I find that super frustrating, because like, I'm not a parent, but I don't think that it's an effective parenting method, and it cultivates this, if you're not going to talk to me about this thing, I'm going to go look at it myself.
Yeah, exactly. So you're not giving me a good reason right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Other than don't.
Because I say so, and because it's dangerous. It's like, I have this mild rebellious streak. I'm going to find someone who's going to be willing to talk to me about it, or I'm just going to go explore for myself. And that's kind of what happens. And I don't know. Maybe I'm thinking of it from a different perspective, but I'm like, they drove that kid to the surface. Like, they didn't give him any choice but to rebel against them, because they didn't provide him with a skill set to engage with the world. And he could have really hurt himself. Like Alberto, for all of his great and redeeming qualities, that kid is like reckless, and like stupidly reckless. Like, what we're going to do is essentially jump off this tower through a tree, and then we're going to build a ramp and we're gonna ride this thing down that ramp and launch off it, and like you're just gonna hold that ramp up for me, bud. And it's like, what? Like, that's super dangerous stuff that they were kind of doing. And like, there's so many moments where I'm like, this is it. This is where one of them gets really badly hurt, and it might make him, you know, once burnt, twice shy. I didn't know exactly where it was going to go because it still hadn't really established it by this point. But I'm like, this is kind of fun because he's exploring, but it seems like this is going somewhere terrible. Like, one of them's either going to die or one of them's going to get really hurt, and like it's going to kind of cause some friction between them, because he's like, you said this was a safe thing that we could be doing, it was going to be fun, it was fun until like it's all fun and games until someone loses an eye, that kind of situation. And so that's where I was in that initial part of the film, thinking these parents have driven him to this wild person who's going to get him killed or really badly hurt, and I'm like, is that a good thing, is that a bad thing, where the hell is this going? I'm kind of glad that I kept watching and engaging, because obviously they get to the surface, because that's the whole premise, them emerging from
It's literally on the movie poster.
Yeah, and when they come out of the surface, they change. They've got to maintain dryness, just like Splash with Tom Hanks and whatever the lady's name, I can't remember. The little Italian girl, how she's like Santa and then inserts a cheese name.
Amazing. Amazing.
I love that.
I was laughing at every time until the very end.
Santa Gorgonzola.
Yeah, Santa Mozzarella.
Yeah, it's so good. It's yeah, I love that it's set in an Italian setting. Yeah, it's just, I don't know, I liked it. There's a lot to like about the film.
Yeah.
And the characters that you kind of discover along the way.
Will, what about you?
Yeah, so I was in the same boat as you, Shane. I thought the movie was a struggle to begin with. There wasn't a lot of context. I mean, they showed these, as you guys were saying before, these shots about, I guess, an underwater farm, so to speak, where there was an agricultural sense of them being on a farm with the sheep and all that. But there wasn't really a lot going on. There wasn't a lot of elaboration on why they were there. I mean, all we know is that they had to stay away from the surface. I did like a few of the cinematic, I guess the way that they portrayed Luca's mind was so vivid. He had such a amazing imagination.
Those.
Yeah. So I mean, him sort of poking his head through the surface and having like a bubble sort of helmet.
It's like he's daydreaming, right? In some of those instances.
Exactly.
Yeah. Very vividly. Yeah.
And him amongst the stars, and
that's a great scene.
It is a fantastic scene. Where it touches the big fish. So that was amazing. But the only issue that I had with it was the idea that the movie didn't have a lot of backstory, and I think it allows the movie would have just been that tiny bit better had they elaborated maybe on some history or why they were there. I mean, if you compare it to a movie, say for example like Finding Nemo, where we get a lot of context right at the beginning of the history of the father and son, and it allows them to move forward. We don't know why the mother was so overprotective. The father was sort of absent, he was hanging out. Where the mother at the beginning of the movie says, Earl, why don't you say something to your son? And he's like, oh no, I don't want any more food, thank you. That sort of mentality. There wasn't a lot of backstory. It's just like, don't go near the service, that's it.
There's only passive stuff. Just to your point, I think because when they get into the town, you see the statue, and there's the human man wrestling and spearing the sea monster. That's kind of the only overlap that you have between these two worlds on the surface. So everybody under the surface is like, don't go near the surface, it's dangerous. And then you have a statue where they're hunting the sea monster. You have like some of the propaganda stuff. They're like, there's a bounty for the sea monsters. There've been more sightings recently. But you're right, that's not history so much, apart from the statue and the fountain. But yeah, you don't have a lot of context as to what is the nature of the relationship, except that everybody that's under the water is scared and everybody above the surface is woefully ignorant.
Yeah.
I think to bring in a Disney film, like a Walt Disney film that does, I think, a much better job, and funnily enough, tied very much to water as well, is Moana, right? Like you get, firstly, Moana attempts to, adventure off into the big old blue, and is hurt, right? She comes back, she's scared, her pride's weakened, and then also you have the father, the chieftain, saying, no, it's dangerous, you can't do this, very much to the, very similar to Luca's mother in this film, but then he has a very understandable personal reason as to why he holds that belief, because he lost, I think, his friend, one of his best mates, when he was much younger, and they were much more reckless and exploring the ocean. There's a reason why he doesn't venture beyond the reef, because he's very much looking out for his daughter, and he not wanting her to suffer the same fate as his friend. So I think Moana does a much better job of just I suppose giving the audience a fair reason to be on board with what he was trying to communicate, and it's not something that exists here from Luca's mother's perspective, unfortunately. But to your point, Terry, very passive, still exists, just not done in a very elegantly cinematic way, I think.
Yeah, and maybe that's because of the sheer amount of time. It makes me think of that intergenerational fallacy that people sometimes buy into. I saw a video recently about it. It's like, hey, why do you cut the edge of the roast off before you put it in the oven? It's like, well, that's what my mum always did. Well, let's ask mum. That was what my mum always did. They asked her grandmother, and she's like, we had a small oven, so we had to cut the thing off. And so it's like you're wasting this piece of the roast because of what someone did, because of the context they're in, without exploring why it was done that way. And so I kind of feel like that's the boat that these guys water terms. Sorry, I completely derailed my thought. They're in that particular boat where they are. It's almost like that prey instinct. They know that they've had conflict with the surface because they have all of these stories passed kind of down to them, but no one's actually lived that conflict.
I think,
and the surface has changed so much.
Well, I think to your point, Terry, I think the movie alludes to the grandma going to the surface every weekend. So there is, like you said, there is that animosity there where you can't go near the shore, but there's still people who break the rules. I mean, the uncle, he doesn't go anywhere near even the shallows, let alone the surface. So
because there's a deep sea.
He even mentions, he's like, there's too much oxygen up here, so
and he's like, the whale carcass, you just open your mouth, you can't help but eat the whale carcass.
It was great. So I think overall, I think that was the only issue that I had between the two. With the whole movie in general. I think they did some really, really fantastic stuff in the movie. The antagonist in the movie, I think he was done quite well with the whole Vespa situation. I thought that was done really well. The idea that the Vespa is the ticket to the whole world, and their drive and their commitment to achieving that is done. It is portrayed in a fantastic way to highlight the friendship between the two kids. Well, I should say the three kids. And there was 2 points in the movie where I teed up. One was
no spoilers,
right at the end. No spoilers. One was right at the end, and another one where
man.
and one was in relation to the father, the older gentleman. So those two were my tear up moments. But I think it was a safe Pixar movie. It was a really safe movie. Still got the message across. It, as Shane said before, it wasn't super strong, but it's right up the genre of Pixar doing what they do, doing what they know, and doing it very, very strongly. It was a surprise pleasure for me to watch it.
Hey Hunter, thanks for joining us in chat, man. You mentioned something there, Will, that I wanted to jump on. I can't remember exactly what you said. what was it? It was a great thought, guys. I'm gonna share it eventually.
Was it about the villain?
Actually, it might have been about the villain.
Will mentioning the villain made me think of something else as well,
Go
which
for it, you
blew
jump
my
in.
mind. And I hope that it's the same thing. So Luca and his family are literally fish in the ocean, which is the big pond, and like the villain is the big fish in a little pond, and like Luca and his friend Alberto, they're trying to explore this bigger, broader world and get out of this small pond that this guy just doesn't want to get out of, and he's crushing everyone who is under him there, like by perpetually entering into this competition, despite the fact that he isn't the right age and things like that, but he's as afraid as Luca's parents are of moving on, of doing something more, of being something bigger. And he's just so I think he's so small, even though he's physically bigger and physically stronger. He's so emotionally and mentally small in this film. Like, his motivations are essentially, I have to be the biggest fish, otherwise what is my purpose? Who am I if I am not the best, the greatest, the fastest? And he's like invested his whole identity into that thing. And then Luca and Alberta come in and they're like bursting at the seams with this kind of desire to grow and see the world and have it opened up to them. You talking about how he's a good villain, but at the same time, I was like, he's such a weak villain.
Right.
When you, from the, not from a physical standpoint, but from every other interpersonal sort of perspective.
You mentioned, I just remember what I was going to say, Will. You mentioned Vespa. I really enjoy the charm that comes with the childlike wonder and almost like this ignorance and naivety to, that they think, Vespa's like this holy out there sort of amazing concept, and let's go into town and I'm sure we'll be able to find Sir Vespa and speak to him.
Sir Vespa.
Exploring the world or something.
Senor
Vespa, that's it.
Yeah.
I really love that. It kind of in a weird way gives me sort of like Jojo Rabbit kind of vibes, where the Magnus in that sort of has this this great sort of reveres like Hitler and obviously the Nazi movement. It's just I found that really, really charming. I will note as well, like there was some speaking about the humor earlier. There were a couple, or just being caught off guard. There was one moment in particular that I won't spoil, but Will and Kim were there when I just burst into absolute laughter, where Luca's dad does something just completely slapstick, and I absolutely loved it. He did it with such confidence from a guy who's just had not displayed much confidence leading up to that point. I won't spoil it, but really great, and also some moments, like emotional story beats that took me by surprise, that Will attest to this also. I sort of, my jaw was on the floor. I'm like, no way. Like, that happened definitely twice in the movie, and kind of caught me off guard, and kind of like a holy crap, I can't believe that just happened. And also, again, just some really charming animation work. There's one particular shot where the antagonist is on a bicycle, and just the way he rides it is so typically just like characterized, professional cyclist. Just the way he does it is amazing. There was also one particular instance with one of his sidekicks where he like reveres. Oh, thanks for that, Twiggy. I'll have to change it. Thank you. He reveres the antagonist and like hands him a harpoon as if presenting like this sword. He sort of slides into frame like on one knee, like holding the harpoon. It's like, my liege, take your harpoon. It was really real. There's small moments like that I thought, there's the Pixar magic that I know and love. So yeah. Look, I don't put this on the same scale as like Inside Out or Toy Story 3 or anything like that, or Finding Nemo and The Incredibles. But look, it's on Disney Plus, and if you are a subscriber, then I can say you can do much worse than Luca.
Yeah. Very charming. I was very, very happy, very delighted. Thank you for suggesting this, Shane. I don't think I would have watched it if it wasn't for this. I'm
good.
very happy.
Nice.
Yeah,
that's good to hear.